Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, Durban, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Mr. Rajesh Gopie, Dr. Sheetal Bhoola, Mr. Sipiwe Mchunu, Mr. Piyush Khandelwal, and online viewers. Good evening and a very warm welcome to the 9th episode of Pravasi Samvaad Diaspora Dialogue. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Rajesh Gopie, who will be interviewed by Dr. Sheetal Bhoola. Dr. Bhoola is an academic and research scholar. She holds 2 master's degrees and a PhD in the social sciences and has a growing publication record. A little background on Rajesh. He is a South African actor of Indian descent, known for roles in television serials like Stellenbosch, Professionals, and The World Unseen. He received the Oppenheimer Scholarship in 2013 and moved to London to continue postgraduate studies. In 2014, he graduated from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama with a master's degree in actor training and coaching. I now invite Dr. Bhoola to conduct the interview.
Namaskar, namaste, and a very warm, humble welcome to you, Rajesh. And thank you for gracing us with your presence here this morning.
Namaste, namaskar, and thank you for having me. It's lovely to see all your lovely faces.
Yeah, so, you know, the exciting thing is that we've got this platform now. And I mean, as of course, Asya introduced you so appropriately, you've been on scholarships, you've taken the world of acting, drama to extreme professionalism. You've come back with international qualification. It's movies, it's serials. We've seen you on stage. I've seen you on stage many years ago as well in Durban. So tell us, if we start from the beginning, give us a bit of a description about your life as an actor.
Well, I think my life as an actor didn't start off as a life as an actor. I loved stories. I loved listening to stories, and becoming an actor wasn't a dream I had, neither was it a pursuit. I think it was an organic part of being part of a storytelling, story seeing process. So I wanted to be around people who told stories, made plays, and they represented a class of people that had something different about them. They had a sense of creativity, a sense of seeing the world in a particular way. And that is what I was attracted to. So I didn't begin with the idea that I'm going to be an actor at all. I began chasing the story and wanting to see the story. It was actually by pure accident that I ended up on stage. And I mean, really, it was an accident, proverbially and literally, you know, and figuratively, it was accident. And and I found my voice through the stage, and I found my writing voice through the stage as well. So this journey, I mean, I'm a son of 2 very working class parents. My father was a truck driver. My mother was a factory machinist. And my first job was in a carpentry, as a carpentry intern. The year I finished school. So, I mean, I you know, in our family, you got out of school and you got yourself a trade and try to make a life for yourself. You know, university was out of your reach. But for once, bad influences were good influences in my life, because the kind of people I befriended were artist types, and they roped me in, and I used to hang out with them and go and watch shows and those kind of things. But my mother reminded me some years ago that when I was little in primary school, I would take 10 cents from her and go and watch school plays in other schools. And how I heard about them, I have no idea. But I used to end up going to the neighboring schools to watch. So I think for me, it was an absolute attraction towards the arts in general. And being an actor is only one element of the arts. I think unfairly, they get too much attention, because one doesn't place enough attention on the writers, the designers, the directors that make art. Just too much is on the face of the actor. The actors are nothing without the other people. So my journey is, as I explained, in a very rustic, sort of roundabout way, in the days of protest theatre with Kessie Govender and that lot, going from community hall to community hall, doing shows. Sometimes there were no lights. even when the electricity failed and people would bring lanterns. I remember that happened in Amzinto once. So it's been an incredible journey. I think ultimately, when you, and I say this to young people that I work with, and I say, it's funny, you think about becoming an actor because you sense this fortune and adulation and fame. I just saw it as a way of telling a story and using it. So with these young people today, it seems like they put the cart before the horse. There's no work, there's just fame. I come from another generation, different motivation. It's been a journey. It's not always glamorous. It's definitely mostly not glamorous. Can be very hard, but it is a calling, like teaching and nursing. Acting is a calling. It's not Hollywood, it's not Bollywood. There are no millions of rands being paid to us for doing things, as people might think, but it is a calling. And it has healed me in many ways, being an actor and a writer and a teacher.
And I mean, I think you're speaking from a core-centered space that you were directed, and more importantly, you were able to honor that calling. And I think that alone is a blessing. And I think more appropriately, to be able to take that calling and develop it to such professionalism and skill like we've seen. And as we go forward, you spoke now briefly about the fact that it's not easy. Challenges, how have you coped, and what has been, the coping mechanism or the driving essence behind soaring through all those difficult times? And let's not leave context, right? We Indian South African community, you're one of those being out there on an international and local platform, making a name for yourself. At the same time, representing the community in a very traditionally racist, apartheid, post-apartheid democracy. And then you're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with stereotypes, you're dealing with different forms of protocol, very unique to South Africa.
These are in one sense macro issues. When you're in a body and you're traveling the road, usually putting one foot in front of the other, trying to avoid the barking dog, the hissing snake, and the low-hanging branch. That's the way I've approached it. Whenever macro issues try to distract me, and they have, I try to look down. I tried the whole thing of climbing Mount Everest. Sherpas, Sentings, who climbed Mount Everest with Sir Edmund Hillary, he asked, how did you do it? He said, one step at a time. I never looked up. So I try not to look up. It's hard when you look up because it's very difficult being a human being in this world. Every time you look up, there's a tsunami of social issues coming at you and from you in some ways. And I try, I know this is maybe strange for you to hear, but I try not to represent my community. Because what is my community? My community have not always been my supporters. They're often the ones who put a knife in my back first. So I have to operate from the sense that I don't represent the stereotype I should be battling. I've never enjoyed sponsorships from Indian people. The open door policy, the open doors that I've had in my career in theater, for example, and the arts have not come from Indians, South Africans. So I have to be cognizant that I am a South African. And when I came onto the scene, Sheetal, in 1999 with my one-man show, Out of Bounds, the first newspaper the first newspaper that raved about me was the Sowetan. The first newspaper that took me down was an Indian journalist in Durban. So, who's my community? My community are those people who love what I do, not the race I represent. And
sorry to cut you there, and I think I must send you this. There's an academic article that's actually published by one of my senior colleagues at UKZN, and he describes the imagined community that the Indian diaspora in South Africa sort of establish and have love-hate relationships.
Yeah, it is a love-hate relationship because it's also Yeah, I think it's the devil of the minority, because you are a minority, you feel alone, and you only have some power when you can be so-called a community. And usually you have these self-appointed custodians of that community. I call them the Hindu Rabba Dabba, and this organization and that organization. They kind of chirp up when suddenly somebody's selling beef in a restaurant with a cow shape, things like that. They suddenly pop up to fight battles, But when the real battles happen, like what happened in July in Durban and what happened in Phoenix, they're nowhere to be seen.
That's right.
Those fuddy-duddies are nowhere to be seen. So we go on. This sense of imagined community is something that I guess minorities feel they need to hang on to survive in some psychological sense. But a little bit of excavating of that, you find that that isn't the case. I mean, even among Hindus, there are so many kinds of sects and divides. I mean, among Indian people, it's hard to, you're right, I would love to read the article about the imagined community. So to come back to the question, I try to deal with what I have to deal with. And I think that starts with sort of exercising my own ability to deal with problems. And I don't have the answers to everything. I don't. Often I'm making mistakes, and those mistakes are really what is teaching me. I try not to represent anybody, like I said, because that would be a bad example for them, maybe. So because I don't want to be answerable to something that I'm not really part of. I don't want to take on a mantle that I'm not really buying into.
And you don't identify, and you don't feel a safe space within, and all of those senses of belonging and
but that identification is forced on you from within and without. Every time I fill in a form for a job, I have to, there's your race right there.
Yes.
Every time I, now it's an open season for saying you Indians, for example. It's open season, and there was a time when we said we were South African. There was a time in the theater in the 80s and 80s, 90s, where we saw colorblind casting, which is what Britain is trying now with was it Bridgerton or whatever. I was doing it with the Cooley Odyssey in the 90s. We're doing colorblind casting. We break bounds because we dare to envision a world in a particular way. But what's weird is the world has swung back into a kind of a right-wing world where people are now receding into these enclaves. And Piyush might be scratching his head really hard, though I can't see his face right now. The problem I have when I look up sometimes, and especially when I'm working with Indian stories and I need actors and actresses, is the pure identification with Bollywood. Bollywood is not even Indian society in India. It is a fantasy society. So what Indians here have done is they forgot about their cane fields and their roots and the dirty feet and the dirt under the nails that we experience as indentured laborers, and transported a new cultural identity through Bollywood, which is a lot of BS. The radio stations, okay, the music is nice, but I often hear today is so-and-so's birthday, he turns 52, he's the dawn of Bollywood, but no one is telling me about birthdays of people around me, the local heroes that I know of, people that we should be celebrating. And this is where, in my stories as a theater practitioner, I try to bring up people, I try to give voice and air so people can identify with themselves in a more realistic way. I get it. Bollywood is escapism. Bollywood is a way of glamorizing a not very glamorous history. But I think it's important as an artist to own your history. I mean, we people of South Africa have been through apartheid. It's a major thing. And we're not being through Bollywood. Come on, really? it's not all a sing and dance. Nice to sing and dance, make no mistake. But
It's
you know,
fun.
when we talk about real art and talk about how we make art, maybe that's why we're having this conversation, because that's what I've done. Out of Bounds was about growing up in Inanda in a joint Indian family, looking at the problems inside and outside the family, especially with Afro-Zulu Indo-Zulu relations in Inanda. The Coolie Odyssey was about indentured labor and the difficulty of being marginalized in India, coming here, being further marginalized, growing relationships across race lines, and again, then receding into a lager mentality. It asks questions. So I hate the obvious. I hate the most obvious thing. I hate that ham-fisted way of doing art and passing on a message. Message will come through if something is structured in a particular way. The situation is presented with a certain amount of integrity and analysis. And because it's performance, the interaction comes through characterization. So that's how I deal with it. I write every day. I'm writing, making notes, trying to make sense. One day when I die, Sheetal, you can have all these books and look at my bad handwriting.
But I mean, no, and I must applaud you for your honesty today also, and for actually taking the stance and being actually honest and depicting it and saying it as it is. Because I think people out there need to know, they need to be educated, need to be fully aware of what it's about and the realities in the spaces that we all are challenged every day as well. And if you talk about your family and your friends, what sort of influence and role have they maintained in your life?
I have the most wonderful, supportive mother who, although it took many years for them to understand what it is I do. And like all parents, and not just Indian parents, only success sort of justifies what you're doing. I mean, I work with a lot of young Black girls in particular at the universities when I'm working there, and they struggle because they're doing drama and their parents want to know, what are you doing? What are you wasting your time with? And for those poor girls, they need to get themselves on a soap opera so that they can show success. And it's a difficult thing. So I come, like I said, a very working class family. I was supposed to be a carpenter, and then I thought I would be a teacher, and I end up being in the arts. So you can see it's a very, very far journey from a trade family to where I am. But especially in the last, my dad died almost 20 years, 2003, almost 19, 20 years ago. And family is always a sore point. It's like a dagger in your heart. If you pull that dagger out, you'll bleed to death. And the dagger that's still there hurts a hell of a lot. So you're going to have to walk around that life with the dagger, because families create wounds in us. And for whatever reason, it's a love-hate wound. You can't do without it. So we can't walk around this world without pain. And that's something I realized. You can look at, I don't know what Speedway could offer in terms of, other religious or other cultural views. But as a Hindu, this is, the world is suffering. And it's not just hunger, but it's emotional suffering as well. And I think, in fact, we go around our lives repairing relationships. That's what we actually do. Every time I have to buy something extra for my mom, it's some kind of bribery for something that happened way down the line, subconsciously. So in that way, I feel I can articulate this in the work. The family is a big part of my work. I mean, right now, I've just written a story about my great-grandmother, my Aji's mother, my father's mother's mother. I didn't know her. She died a long time ago, well before I was born. But she had a very interesting story in how she came from India. And I was told the story basically in 2 lines. So I took those 2 lines and I put it into my pen and allowed that pen to create a whole story, which I'm so pleased with. So family, even though they're not alive, are still giving me stories. When I wrote the play about indentured labor, I realized that we South Africans of Indian descent don't have a song. We don't have a poem. We don't have a Danny boy like the Irish do. I mean, the Zulus have enough songs. They got songs for, they can sing all day long. Indians do not have songs. The songs were there. They lost it. Within 2 generations, we disowned our very own history. And I understand why that happened. We got rid of our cheap furniture, our those mats that we used to put on our floor and started putting tiles and all those kind of things to sterilize ourselves of our slave past. And that came at a huge cost. And so, what do I write about now if I write about family? You ask anybody, I challenge all of you, you ask anybody. Go and ask a young person, do you know any stories from your family? And I can guarantee you, they don't. Because that ability in the human being has been taken away from them and given to Netflix and the likes. So you don't have a story. The story you're going to get is somebody else's story. You're an owned people. Somebody else owns you. You think you own it. You know what you do? What you do in turn? You then go and buy Bollywood. And then you try to put that on like a big mask and a wig and sing and dance. But when you come into my acting workshop, in 2 seconds, I take off that wig and take off that mask and you're standing there and you got nothing to shake. Because being an actor is actually being culturally aware, in touch, intuitive, and tapped into. So I come from a family, very working class. My father was an amazing singer. Sadly, could not have any part of the arts because he had to, fend for his family, and he was a truck driver. My mother's tone deaf, but she's a very supportive woman, non-judgmental, and she doesn't actually care about any success. She just wants to know I'm happy and I'm safe and I'm, okay. It doesn't matter how many times I'm in the newspaper or if I'm television. It makes no difference to her, which is what I love. So we don't go around in my family and even in my extended family with a sense of I am somebody important. I'm just an uncle, I'm just a cousin, I'm a brother, cousin brother, whatever it is. That's how I operate. And I try to stay away from this idea of celebrity. I find it personally disgusting.
Well, thank you for that. And obviously also the mere fact that you've touched on that, the fact that you always make a point of being grounded, for being very sure in what you stand, quickly in a line, your top 5 values.
I think my top value is being true to self. Thinks of Polonius, above all else, to thyself be true, to thy own self be true. And that means, own where you're born, own the people you come from. And the second value I would say is friendship. Value friendships. You service them because they're often better than family in many cases. My third value is look after the old people because they are the most amazing. They are the reservoirs of life on the planet. Don't ill-treat people. My fourth is forget about your people. Look after the people that are around you first. And charity begins in home. It doesn't mean literally your home. It means the people around you. In Durban, we are surrounded by Black and Indian people in my mom's place. And Diwali, I'm not driving to my Pua's house in Merebank to give her sweets that she already has in her house for Diwali. I give it to the people around because that is my backyard. And if we start operating that way, then maybe we'll make our society better. My fifth value is don't undermine and underestimate a true education. I'm not talking about certification. That is the education of understanding humanity. all education, all knowledge comes from humanity. And that is having an empathy in humanity and trying to be curious about the human being and the human psyche. It leads to a better understanding. And we're all guilty of falling short. The more tired we are, the more stressed we are, the less we process, and we have knee-jerk reactions. So those are my top 5 values.
Thank you. It's clearly articulated. And I mean, we've shared this point where we say, okay, like you said, you're adopting certain elements of your Hindu, Indian heritage, Indian culture. Which or what cultural aspects has had the greatest influence in your career or in your personal life?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I'm a Hindu who doesn't believe that Hinduism is a prescribed religion. I believe it's a way of life. And because Hinduism is so vast, it's like an ocean. I only need to eat the fish I need when it presents itself, you know. There are some basic values that exist in human beings before we even exist in a religion. Like don't kill, don't steal, as far as I'm concerned, you know. Try to do good. Those are basic human things. They're not even religious. But Hinduism is an amazing oral text for me. And the stories that come out of Hinduism were some of the first stories I heard as a child. Because when we used to do the Satnarayan Puja at home, there's the story, the oral storytelling part of the puja, which is non-Sanskrit and is optional, which is the story of Kalavati and her husband, the Banyas, who did not fulfill their promise of doing a prayer. And what happens to them? I used to love listening to that story. Do you know the story, Sheetal?
I was hoping I'd carry on. I'm wondering if it's the same one that I experienced, but
well, it's the story of the couple did not have children, and despite being so rich and traders, they had no children. And so someone said they must do the Satnarayan Puja and they will be blessed, and they were blessed with a daughter. But over the years they forgot, and eventually the son-in-law drowns in a boating accident, in a ship accident, because they hadn't done it's a very agrarian type story to say, do what you promise to God and you'll be okay. I mean, one can have problems with that story as well, but it's that kind of story. So it's interpretive. You can decide what you want it to mean in the context. Now, I read a book not so long ago called The Difficulty of Being Good, which uses the Mahabharata as a conduit to decide what is good and bad in situations. And the basic summarization, which is what I agree with, is that what is good here is not necessarily good there. And that dharma is not so much righteousness, but balance in the moment. That each moment is balanced. Let me give you an example. World War II. If the Germans came and knocked on my door and I was hiding a Jewish person in my pantry and said, do you have any Jews here? And I would say no, right? Which is a lie. And someone says, the truth shall set you free. But if I spoke the truth then and said there is one there, they will murder her or him. So you have to balance out what truth is. I'm not saying go out and tell lies. I'm saying the book makes the point that every moment, like don't speak of rope in the house of he who has been hung. Have sensitivity, know when to speak, exercise your filters. Use a sort of common slang these days, filters. Hinduism has been good for me because it's a forgiving entity in my life. I can forgive myself within it. I know I don't believe I'm going to go and burn in hell, because I'm wise enough to see that, sometimes when you do something wrong, it's going to ping back at you over there. And then you think, oh yeah, well, I did that, didn't I? I got it back now. So, and it allows you to reflect. It allows you to challenge it. But we've also seen, and I have to make point again, coming back to mooing and cowing and cow eating, it's become a bit of a right-wing situation, which doesn't make me very happy. But I was born a Hindu. I'm proud of it. When I was little, I was a bit ashamed to pray, but my grandmother used to grab me by the ears and take me to the janda and make me bow down. And it was right there by the road where people were walking past. So I used to feel so embarrassed, like praying to bending down and praying. But I look back now, I thank my grandmother so much for that, those ear pinching and back of my head slapping. I'm so grateful to understand the value of sun and the value of physical praying. That it's not praying to stones, it's not praying to idols, it's the act. As an actor trainer, an actor cannot think he's an actor, he has to perform, act, action, act or action. It is to do. To be human is to do. To be Hindu is to do. It is to do. You bow down, you surrender. Just like the Muslims bow down and surrender in the mosque. It is a surrendering to something that is perceived to be greater, and there is a greater world. Right now, another thing about community, back when I was growing up, community was the people you lived around. You relied on community for people, for advice. There was always some older uncle who people went to seek advice, always someone who knew someone who could do something. There was always an auntie who could do massaging and can help with the babies. Nowadays, that community is gone because everybody thinks they're a community unto themselves. They don't need other people. They themselves as a community, a Google community. But we've lost that. I don't know how we'll ever get it back, but maybe, I don't know how, but it's something I lament. And everybody talked to each other, like my grandmother and like some of her relatives, they would say, oh, but Ram did this, and it's like Sita like this, he acts like a Ravana, or, you were constant references to Hindu mythology and reminded us why those things were important and how we saw the world. I mean, people are so free today, they're free to be nothing, which is a problem.
And yes, absolutely. But not everybody's going to view it as a problem too. That's the reality also.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, going forward, if we're looking at the young aspiring actors out there, and I mean, you speak about your creativity coming out in different forms in your writing, in your scripting, in that imagination of yours that puts the shows together, and then conceptualizing it. Then, of course, taking that extreme skill and, of course, performing. What advice do you give out to the young aspiring artists out there? What would you like for them to always be in mind as they, travel on this journey that you have walked through successfully?
It's a wonderful journey if you can understand some very basic things. You might not always be working, but you will have struggles, and that you do not get paid millions like just a tiny fraction of people get. Most actors in Hollywood and Bollywood, although you might see them on screen, are not earning those. Only a bunch of superstars get that kind of money. That's the first reality check. Secondly, if you're not having fun, don't do it. If it's make or break, it's going to break more than it will make. And I would say to them, fall in love with the craft of acting, not with the idea of you being an actor, because that's a different ballgame altogether. And a lot of people today tell you straight up, I want to be on TV. Why? Because it's fame. They want to be adulated and adored wherever they go. But that is a trap. That is a trap, and it will lead inevitably to unhappiness. Read, study your craft, read what other people have gone through. Reading is the great art of finding out what exists in humanity. You might not know what it is to be an axe murderer, but if you read about it, someday if you're playing that part, you'll have some sense of imagination around it. And you'll be surprised. People come to, I want to be an actor, they tell me. I said, well, how many plays have you read? They haven't read a single play. How many screenplays have you read? I haven't seen a single screenplay. I haven't read a single screenplay. So how are you going to be an actor if you have not read anything? The very thing that you do or should be doing is to read a play so that you know what it is, what a play is. And if you're given it, you know how to analyze it. Don't know. So empower yourself through expertise and knowledge. Don't be afraid to get training. And I think mainly I would like to say that being an actor is not about vanity. Because if you try it that way, you are in for serious trouble. Serious trouble. It's not the way you look. I mean, it's really is how you embody it. Look at someone like Danny DeVito. I mean, who would give him a chance? One of the best actors on the planet. He's like, not even, he's 4'2" in height. So it really fall in love with the craft of acting, because then you have something to offer. There are a lot of good looking people in the world, but not all of them can give you what you need. You need actors who can act. So a lot of young people, I mean, my Facebook will be having messages all the time, like, do you have a part in a film for me? I'm like, I don't even know you. You think I'm just gonna, acting in a film is just taking somebody and dump you there and that's it? I mean, I get it, they want to be it, but if they don't want to be actors, they want to be famous. And so know what it is you're getting into is what I would say to young people. This is a serious business. It can chew you up and spit you out very quickly. Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And your personal goals and aspirations, anything you want to highlight or share with us going forward? Where to from here? It's been serial, television, stage, creative, writing, producing.
Yeah, I have a performance I'm going to be rehearsing for that happens at the end of this month here in Cape Town, preparing for it. And I have a television series starting next month. It's an international series shot here as well in Cape Town. So that's on the horizon. Last year in lockdown, I completed a postgraduate certificate in education, which I had started many years ago, but never completed. So I thought, okay, I'd finish that. So that I'm writing a book about indentured labor, a story. And I all I could do is like put my one foot in front of the other and become productive. You're only productive if you are doing something. You can't be productive by sitting and thinking about productivity.
Absolutely.
You have to do. And I think coming back to acting, being an actor, acting means action, to do. Sometimes it's okay to pack shelves because it gives you another experience. And I've done all kinds of things. I'm not ashamed to do all kinds of things because I know it doesn't tamper with my goal and my dream, but it extends my experience range. When the time comes, I might be able to play a packer.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for making the time for us. We're really honored. And thank you for the depth in the interview, the honesty, sharing with us who you are, what you stand for, where you've come from, and embracing it all. And I think for us, we could all just learn so much from that. And similarly, I hope the viewers as well are going to embrace this accordingly and take heed from that. And from the essence of such a strong essence of authenticity that you present there, of yourself, your individuality, and acknowledging, of course, all your aspects of creative juices.
So I want to finish. I mean, I know we're finishing up now, and I want to say something. Does anyone here know what the most used word is in all of Shakespeare?
I used to know this back in the day. I don't know this anymore. I think.
Look and I shall find.
No, it's just one word.
No, I've gone blank. Sorry, I don't.
Spiwe?
No, I can't remember.
Okay.
To do. Is it do?
Time.
Time. I knew it was something.
Yeah, time. And time is very important. He was acutely aware of time. And I'll leave you with one line. And I want to say to people who are watching this, we're not always productive, but try to do something. Just try to make somebody's life a little bit better. Try to do something, try to make something, try to write something, even if it's your garden. And I'll leave you with this line from Richard II, who was the boy king. And he's murdered shortly after this. And one of the lines he says, "I have wasted time, and now doth time waste me. Now hath time made me his numbering clock. And with their sighs, their jar, their watches on unto mine eyes. The outward watch whereto my finger, like a dial's point, is pointing still in cleansing them from tears. Now, sir, the sound that tells what hour it is, are clamorous groans which strike upon my heart, which is the bell. At times, minutes, and hours show sighs, tears, and groans, but my time runs posting on in proud Bolingbroke's joy." I love that speech because what have we done with our lives is basically how we spent it. What are we doing? I mean, do something. It's a wonderful life if you just look at your feet and put one step in front of the other and forget about all these big issues that are trying to distract us in the media. That's what they want to do, distract us so that we can sell hits on the internet.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much. And I'm so touched that you actually made the time for us today. And
That's great. Thank you.
Myself, and thank you so much. And go well.
Thank you.
And all the best with your endeavors going forward. I look forward to catching you on Netflix.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Okay,
Bye, everyone.
thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you, Dr. Bhoola and Rajesh, for that enlightening interaction. We have now come to the end of the interview. I'd like to invite my colleague, Mr. Spiwe Mchunu, from the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, Durban, to render the vote of thanks this evening.
Namaskar and greetings to all of you. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, I am honored today to deliver a vote of thanks on today's 9th episode of the program Pravasi Samvaad Diaspora Dialogue. Allow me to mention our online guests who took part this evening. Mr. Rajesh Gopie, a South African actor who had a sterling interview with Dr. Sheetal Bhulaji, a researcher and an academic. When I was listening to Rajesh Gopiji, it was so touching. Today we saw Rajesh Gopie that we don't know. A Rajesh that is, telling everything. His interactions were full of wisdom. So to Rajesh ji, thank you very much. It was very touching and very interesting. To Bhulaji also, Dhanyavad ma'am, for conducting such a wonderful and very interesting interview. To Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Ms. Asya Nabi, Mr. Piyush Kandelwal, thank you for taking part on today's program. To all our online participants who took part on today's program, we'd like to say thank you for taking part on today's program. For more information, you are kindly advised to visit ICCR in Durban Facebook page. So once again to Rajesh Gopiji and Dr. Sheetal Bhulaji, thank you very much to both of you. And all of you have a wonderful evening. Namaskar.